Hello everyone. In my prior recording, I went over the changes and what guns that I felt were best for Season 5. In that recording, I did briefly mention that I have moved the HDR out of my Warzone quick sheet document, which is where I put gun builds that I feel are worth it. We'll talk about that, the ISO, and some others. Okay, so the ISO is just bad all around. The drum magazine minus your movement speed by 9 or 10%. Ace seems to think 10, but I think it's 9. Who knows what the correct answer is, but either way, that's just way too much movement speed reduction for a drum magazine. It's one of the worst in the game. Then you have to also factor in that its time to kill sucks. Okay? It's worse than the P90 in both Warzone and multiplayer. The P90 is the longest range SMG of Warzone with an under 600 millisecond time to kill. The Striker 45 does have a pretty extreme range, even more so than this, but it's over 600 milliseconds in Warzone. The only place that the Striker 45 really shines is in multiplayer, because in multiplayer, it can replace an M4 if you're good enough. It does have that much range. So, yeah, it does make me very sad to see this because I was hoping for another option besides the P94 A-ranged SMG in Warzone. Unfortunately, it would seem that the devs had absolutely no idea what they were doing when they made this weapon. So, let's talk about the AN-94. I don't have anything here for that, but the AN-94 is very slow on the time to kill for Warzone. In multiplayer, it might do a little bit better, but Warzone, it's just too slow, at least so I think. Now, there is a reason for me saying I think. I have noticed this with the AN-94, and it would appear Drifter did as well, that the AN-94 is always a 2-burst on the first trigger pull if it's an automatic. If you put it to single fire, though, it's always a 2-burst. Most people aren't going to think about switching fire modes because really no guns require that, right? But in the AN-94's case, it does switch to a 2-burst if all the time if it's set to single fire. If it's using its burst fire, it has a really fast RPM. But if it's not sitting on the single fire mode, then it's just going to be a 2-burst for the first trigger pull, and it'll be automatic after that. I'm not sure if the time to kill numbers that have been posted for the AN-94 are based on it being automatic or if it's based on its 2-burst mode. Exclusive Ace or the other ones probably can answer that, though. Let's just say, in theory, that it does really well in 2-burst fire mode all the time, and that it gets a faster time to kill. Then you have to look at what its competition is going to be. It's going to be the Bruin and the Kilo. They're the virtually no recoil guns within the range of where the AN-94 is right now. It would have to compete with one of those two. If it can't beat the Kilo, then it's not even worth it. It would also need good range to go with the time to kill. So not only does it have to compete with the Kilo's 616 millisecond time to kill on 3 armor plates, but it'll also have to compete with the range. Because remember, range does equate to time to kill. If you hit your damage drop-offs, the time to kill gets slower. I digress. That's the A-94 in a nutshell. Okay, HDR got removed from, well, I should say moved to the other document for a good reason. When it comes to Warzone, it's constantly shifting, obviously. You can't expect a specific build or at least a specific purpose to do what it's supposed to 100% of the time due to those changes. Example is the HDR. The HDR is good for one thing and one thing only. That's sending a high velocity bullet at extreme ranges. Because of that, the HDR is best if it's hitting heads. If you can't hit the head, then the HDR is not worth it. I only left it in for seasons 1 through 4 because there wasn't really that many good options for that level of range. But now that they've changed the damage drop-offs for the semis, now that's a completely different story. They've also fixed the AMR's headshot damage, so that's a bonus. So let's look at the AMR and to further the example I was just giving with the HDR. In comparison to the HDR, the AMR is more versatile because of it being semi-auto and it having the flexibility to either aim for the upper torso or the head. The time to kill on the Rytech AMR is 600 milliseconds if hitting upper torso and 3 armor plates. Okay. The HDR is 2,857 milliseconds. So let me use a calculator because I cannot be bothered to do that kind of math at this early hour. So 2,857 minus 600, and you get a 2,257 difference. An entire 2,257 milliseconds, okay? That is a long time, which means that you can't rely on the HDR for upper torso knocks in comparison. Well, when you're comparing it to the Rytech. The Rytech does a much better job of that than the HDR. So that's why the Rytech is more versatile than the HDR, because now it's saying, well, if you can't hit the head and you've got to go for the upper torso, then fine. You'll still drop them relatively quickly. To put this in perspective, 600 millisecond time to kill is going to be within AR territory. Let's see if I can find an example here. Yeah, the M13 650. Let's see. Where is the Grau? There it is. Grau 640. Yeah, so they're about as close as I'm going to get to 600, I think. 576 on the M4. Yeah, so you can see that the Rytech is within those guns' time to kill. Roundabout, or close enough. Which is a pretty insane thing to think about. Even the Dragunov is going to do it better than the HDR. Look at the Dragunov's time to kill. It's 1,040. Sure, it's going to be an entire 440 milliseconds slower than the Rytech, but it's still better than nothing. So yeah, this is the stuff that you need to keep in mind. While I have this pulled up, though, let me just go ahead and quickly circle back to the AN-94. It's 630 milliseconds, and see, I don't know if that's just doing 2 bursts all the time or if it's doing a full automatic, at least on ACE's chart. Now, I've seen other charts that don't say 630, so I'm not really sure what the right answer is, but it puts it just barely faster than a Grau, which is pretty freaking bad. So yeah, I do not recommend that. But yeah, there you have it. While I'm on this little rant, I want to quickly come back to the Commando Foregrip discussion. Some of the people that I've been watching as of late have been going back to the Commando Foregrip, and I absolutely despise the Commando Foregrip because of the fact that it's minus 2 to 3% movement speed. When you put the long barrels on a lot of these guns, it's going to be minus 3 to 4% movement speed. So while 2 to 3% on one attachment may not seem like much to you, it stacks up. Once you start adding in the long barrel or the other stuff that slows it down, like the extended magazines or things like that, it really hurts after a while. You'll notice that in a lot of these builds, plus or minus, maybe, I think it's the SA7, yeah, it's SA7 AK RAM, they're the only ones that have extended magazines. I leave the other ones alone. Well, Bruin just needs its 60 rounds anyways, but point is, the only ones that put the extended magazine is the SA7 AK and RAM. Other than that, I leave these guns alone. That's just because they lower the movement speed and make the ADS slower. So I try to avoid using extended mags if I can for those reasons. Movement speed, in my opinion, is just as important as ADS in Warzone. It means how quickly you can get from point A to point B, obviously, which can mean the difference between life or death. A better alternative to the Commando Foregrip is the Ranger Foregrip. The numbers change all the time, but as from what I understand at this point in time, the Ranger Foregrip has the same ADS penalty as the Cronin C480, VLK 3 times, the Reflex or Hollow Sights. So that's really not that much to worry about. People fail to look at the actual numbers themselves. They just go straight to the loadout page and they just see ADS penalty. The second they see that red text that says ADS penalty, they immediately do not touch the Ranger Foregrip. They go straight to the Commando Foregrip because guess what? It doesn't have the minus on it. So, yeah, just please use the Ranger Foregrip instead of the Commando Foregrip if you're looking for something to handle the horizontal recoil. If you're looking for something for vertical, then obviously use Merc Foregrip for that category. Yeah, so that's really all I have to say about that stuff. Hopefully that better explains my decisions from the prior video and why I have these builds going on. Thanks for listening.